with the experience that you just had.
Oh, my. I
Are
was
you
like, what
okay?
happened? And then I remembered. All right. So what Jen's talking about is that you ever wake up and you just got a hankering? Like I had a hankering for bacon, egg, and cheese, and I needed this bacon, egg, and cheese. Let me on a bagel, specifically on a bagel, right? Obviously,
Of course.
obviously. And I ordered it. We were like in a recording. I ordered it. I was like, oh, cool. Got delivered. I'm gonna go take a break. We'll get back on the recording afterwards. It wasn't, they didn't deliver me a bacon, egg, and cheese. They delivered me a egg and cheese on white toast. There was no bacon and there was no bagel, which are the two honestly most
Most im-
significant parts of
most
that.
important things. 100%. Not even a
So
question.
I'm grieving right now, but I'm gonna be
Yeah,
okay.
you will. You are resilient. You will get through this.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And I will support you.
All right. And we're gonna set some boundaries with ourselves. Maybe the boundary I'm gonna set with myself is to not order from that place again.
I think that's a good boundary to or to have
But
with yourself.
before we talk more about boundaries with yourself, we have an intro question. Aaron asked, Aaron, the listener Aaron, we love you. What celebrity would you want to play you in a movie? I'd say Brie Larson just because I love Brie Larson.
I think Jennifer Lawrence because I love Jennifer Lawrence.
Okay, so we would just have Jennifer Lawrence and Brie Larson, who I feel like are the two. You know what? It's also funny. They're both like two like relatable actresses.
It's so relatable
So
and fun.
relatable. All right. So we had put up this Instagram
Yeah.
about boundaries with yourself, and people had a lot to say about it. So first let's go over what we had posted.
So the thing that we posted that I think people really related to and connected to were the 5 signs that you have unhealthy boundaries with yourself. Number 1, you don't follow through on commitments that you make to yourself. Number 2, you don't respect your own time and energy. Number 3, you set unrealistic expectations with yourself. Number 4, you overcommit yourself. And number 5, you focus on other people's needs before your own.
Mm.
And the reason why I think that a lot of people related to this is because I really do think it is hard to set boundaries with yourself. Leading us into our first question is why are boundaries with yourself always the hardest to keep?
You know, it's interesting. I think one of the reasons, my guess would be one of the reasons why is because there's not really the accountability. Like we should be holding
Okay.
that accountability for ourselves, but like we don't. So it's kind of like, whatever. I told myself I'd do the dishes today, but like it doesn't really matter. No one else is going to know.
Yeah.
And so it tells you how much we do to impress or to perform for other people.
Yes. Yeah. I think boundaries with ourselves are the hardest to keep because we have such an easier time disappointing ourselves than we do disappointing other people. If we disappoint ourselves, we already understand what the repercussions of that are. And when we disappoint other people, those repercussions are unpredictable for us. And the unknown is terrifying for us as human beings. And so it's much easier to be able to disappoint ourselves when we know what the repercussions are and we have control over the repercussions, right? Like I didn't do the dishes. And so the repercussions are I'm just going to have to do the dishes later. I'm going to have a
Yeah.
dirty sink. But that's something I have control over. Where if it's related to someone else, you don't know how they're going to react,
Mm-hmm.
right? You don't know what their reaction might be. And so it's much easier to disappoint ourselves than it is to disappoint other people.
So let's get an example of like what like a boundary with yourself is. So like right, let's take the example of you don't respect your time and energy. So let's say I had an incredibly difficult week, but I made a commitment to somebody to do something on Friday night. The idea of doing this is overwhelming to me. I feel panicked to thought about it, but I'm so worried about upsetting the other person. I would rather just totally annihilate the little bit of energy I have left and then possibly resent this person. And it's true, you might go and you might end up having a good time.
Yeah.
And so it's hard to say. So you tell yourself, it's like, I'll be fine once I get there. And maybe that's true. But also sometimes you're like just not in the headspace. And so I'd rather not set a boundary with me and what I need for my time and energy. And I'd rather just go for someone else. So last week in the office. We had like this crazy day. Like, just there was like a million things that happened, unpredictable things. And I was so overstimulated. But I was supposed to leave at 4 o'clock to go to this neighborhood like holiday happy hour thing. And I was just sitting there and I was like, I can't do this. Like, I can't go make small talk. I'm really like overstimulated. If I'm there, I think I'm going to get anxious and then I'm going to be overthinking things that I said. Like, I just knew it wasn't going to go well. But 2 years ago, 3 years ago, if you had said to me, cancel something you committed to, I would be like, oh, I made a commitment. How could I do that?
Yeah.
And now it was very easy to send a text saying, I'm so sorry, I'm not going to make it. But something, my day got turned around and I'm really looking forward to the next thing.
What would have 2 years ago, what your younger self 2 years ago, what would have kept you from setting that boundary?
I was worried people would be upset with me.
Yeah.
Yeah, disappoint people upset with me, or I wouldn't get invited next time. That's like always a big fear of mine. That then I'll be left out in the future. If I say no one time, then I'm like off the invite list.
Oh, how do you feel about that now?
I don't give a shit if I'm off the invite list now.
Just gonna say, I was gonna be like, don't, I'm fine.
But my relationships now, and I'm not even talking about 2 years ago, I'm going to say 5 years ago, 10 years ago, my relationships now are so much more secure and deep relationships that like canceling one thing, it was not at risk in anything. Right. But 10 years ago, my relationships were pretty superficial and surface level. So like it could have been like that,
Right. That like having those moments of connection were much more important because you weren't getting the fulfillment that you needed from the relationships around you that you get now.
Yeah, exactly.
That makes a lot of sense to me. And you hear this a lot of like, I committed to this. I don't want to bail out.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but maybe this is just me. If someone's like, I've had a really long week, I'm so sorry, can we reschedule? I'm like, fuck yeah, of course.
Yes, but not everyone is you.
I know. That's why I was
you love a cancellation, but some people, I don't know, let's say someone was like really excited and they feel really hurt.
It's not just that I love a cancellation. I relate to that so much. Like,
okay, but let's say let's say you're in the space and you need to cancel something. Let's like walk through this.
Yeah.
The person you're canceling on has been really going through it and they were really looking forward to this night.
Yeah.
And they're also someone who's maybe sensitive
to
plans changing or transitions. And they're not thrilled.
What do you do about it is the question.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing is one of the reasons, like we said, that we would be willing to put ourselves in distressing situations because we don't want to cause it to someone else, especially if we already know that person's going through some shit.
Right. I think that having a deeper conversation about it is really important. And I think balancing out, right? Are you someone that's always canceling on them, right? Like if that's the case where I would ask yourself, is this actually a friendship you want to continue? Mm-hmm. Right. If you're someone who keeps making plans with the same person and then keeps canceling because you genuinely do not want to see this person, right? Or it feels like too much for you, or maybe you're in completely different places. I think that might be a bigger conversation you might have to have with yourself. If it is the situation where you are completely overstimulated and you set these plans and the person is going to be really sensitive to it and was really looking forward to this, and this, that I think a deeper conversation can sometimes come into play where you say, listen, I know that you're really struggling. I want to be able to be there for you fully. I'm really struggling today. And so can we reschedule for tomorrow or Sunday? For some reason, I'm picturing this to be on a Friday because it's Friday today. Yeah. Can we reschedule? Because I want to be able to be fully myself so that we can really connect. And I don't have that capacity right now, because what you don't want is when you forego a boundary with yourself to take care of someone else, right? One time it might be okay. A few times it might be okay. But if it's happening over and over again, you begin to build resentment in the relationship towards this other person who maybe didn't get a say in that resentment, right? So if you can say to someone that you really care about, like, hey, I'm also really struggling today. I know that you really get rejuvenated by being with other people. And like I get rejuvenated by like sitting by myself. And so I just need tonight to sit by myself. And like I would love to meet up with you tomorrow, or I would love to meet up with you this week when I have the headspace for it.
Yeah.
That is, I think, a really important conversation to have if the relationship is really important
Yeah.
to you. I have a friend who very much knows me at this point, and she very much gets rejuvenated by like talking about like what she's going through. She knows that I am just, if I'm too overstimulated, I shut down. And so I will not answer her for days. And she knows that. And I prepped her originally when we first started to be friends. I said, listen,
This
I
Lisa?
no,
Oh.
no. I love Lisa. Lisa does not do that. No. I prepped her originally. I said, listen, like I get really overstimulated from like what we do and we talk a lot. And so I get really shut down. And she called me and I texted her back the other day and I said, hey, like, I'm so sorry I couldn't get back to you. Like, I'll call you. I'm in the car, blah, blah, blah. And she was like, it's no problem at all. Like, I know you. It's fine. I know you will get back to me when you have the space.
There's
And so
safety in that relationship
there's a
because you were
lot.
honest from the beginning.
Exactly. I set the precedence from the beginning about who I am and how I recuperate for myself so that there wasn't any blurred lines. I don't
Yeah.
think I would have done that when I was younger, but I'm
No.
very clear about what I can provide in a relationship now.
Which is amazing for new relationships, right? So I
Yes.
think we're talking, right? So like if you're starting to a new relationship, how do I be honest from the very beginning? But
Yes.
let's say that these are people that have been in your life for 20 years
Yeah.
and the dynamics are very set.
Yes.
It's very hard to then transition, but you're going to have to say, hey, I've been learning new things about myself. And here's one of the things I've learned.
Yes. And that when you are really honest about who you are and what you need, and your friends accept you for that and they understand that about you, I think that that's a really beautiful thing to be able to have. I have a friend from college who I never answer. I think I just like don't answer texts. I'm really horrible at answering texts. This is like when you texted me about opening up a Pizza Hut, a pizza chain, and I never answered you. Like sometimes I'll just read things and forget. When I am in a group text, I'm so overstimulated by the amount of text coming
Oh,
in that
it's
like
horrible.
I'm really horrible at following up. So I have a friend from college who, if like something's happening, she specifically texts me because she knows I don't read any group texts, which I really appreciate. I don't expect that of people. Like,
No,
I
that's
think it's
very
my
nice.
responsibility to like catch up and see what's going on. But she knows that about me. And so she reaches out. So I just think there's so much you can really benefit by being very honest about who you are in your relationships. That in and of itself is a boundary that you set with yourself and you show to other people, so that they can really understand you. And the people who maybe need more in their relationships, they might not stick around.
Yeah. I want to jump to this other question because I think
Oh.
it leads into an interesting part of the conversation. Somebody wrote in and said, where is the line between having boundaries for yourself and being selfish? And I think this is very interesting because we've talked about this before, I know, in earlier episodes about we have selfish, selfless, and in the middle is self-care. And so for you to say to yourself, what is self-care? And how do I define that for myself? Here is the other thing. When you talk about this line, the line can be different for everyone else. So somebody might see something you're doing as selfish and it wasn't. It was you being taking care of yourself.
Yeah.
But someone else might have a different opinion and you're going to have to decide how you track that for yourself.
I also wonder if anyone is even saying this, or is this something that you just say to yourself?
Your fear is that you're selfish, right? And who told you that? Why is it such a big fear?
Yeah. Who told you that? What's your idea around what it looks like to be selfish? And because that expectation around what that means might have to shift a little for you. I wonder what it does to you to hold that expectation for yourself. Does that mean that you're never setting boundaries for yourself? Does that mean that you're always putting others people's needs before your own as because of the fear of being selfish? So I want to understand, like, what are the consequences of that? Is the standard that you're holding yourself to realistic? Um, and is it working for you? And does it make sense to maybe move in the other direction a little bit so that you can start to take care of yourself a little bit more?
Yeah. Okay. How to balance necessary self-care and pushing yourself towards a goal.
Oh, I struggle with this one.
Okay, so let's say let's use gym and exercise because I think that's a really common one, right? So let's say I say to myself, I'm going to try to have some type of body movement and exercise 3 times a week. Take care of my body to feel stronger, whatever. Okay, cardiovascular health, who the fuck knows? All right, and then you're having a really fucking hard time and you get bronchitis, and you say to yourself, okay, I probably shouldn't be working out, but I made this commitment to myself. I have to be in the gym 3 times a week. Then it's pushing yourself towards a goal that's not helping you at this moment, right? What your body needs in that time is probably rest and fluids and not exerting yourself in every way. And so how do you start to know the difference? When does it cause harm is the good question.
That is a beautiful way of putting it, is when does it cause harm? Because you're talking about it in one sense of you set this goal for yourself because you have bronchitis. And if you're still pushing yourself to go to the gym, it's not helping you. On the other end of it, right, where you're saying, oh, like I want to rest, I want to give this to myself. Is too much rest making you feel bad, right? Is there something about that where you're saying like, oh, I don't feel like going to the gym, or I don't feel like meeting that, moving my body 3 times a week because I'm tired. Is that actually helping you? And maybe it is. Maybe you are completely exhausted. And because of that, your rest is really serving you. Or is laying down for that long, is it causing you anxiety? Is it creeping up? And so I think it's on a day by day basis, a moment by moment basis, to be able to be very connected to yourself is so
other
important.
Thing about boundaries is there has to be flexibility with it.
Yes.
So if going to the gym 3 times a week is going to exert yourself and cause harm, but doing some light stretching isn't, can our goal be shifted and changed? Yes. Is there adaptability? And that's one of the things to look at, is if it's causing harm, it's also rigidity.
Yeah.
Rigidity doesn't work in boundaries. They're not going to work with yourself. If I say to myself, I have to do A, B, and C, Jen knows I go to bed very early. We were in a text message thread last night. Wait, we were in a group chat with our dear friend Natalie. She sends this text at like 10:15 at night. And she was like, and it started with like, I'm really sorry to text you so late. Jen answers and she's like, it's not late for me, but Emily's definitely been asleep for 3 hours.
And you were.
We'd only been asleep for 30 minutes so far, but I go to bed really early because I get tired early. It's just like, it's just like a thing that I do, right? So it's a gift I do for myself. It's a boundary set for myself. I know I don't do well with lack of sleep. I go to bed early. But if I was to say to myself, I have to be in bed every single night at 9 p.m., that rigidity is not going to be self-care. It's going to feel like a ton of pressure and feel very overwhelming.
It's like the when I read the 5 a.m. Club book.
Yes.
This is a perfect example.
It really is.
Came back from.
I have to say something. My ring light is flashing and it's like really irritating me.
Yeah.
So I'm going to turn this off. And then people, if you're watching on YouTube, is going to notice there's a shift. And then you're going to see the difference of a ring light versus a non ring light.
There it is.
I had to say that because it was hurting my eyes.
Yeah. There it is. That's important because you didn't want to be distracted. When I came back from Thailand, I had this completely revolutionary experience. Apparently, I read this book that told me to wake up at 5 a.m. and I committed. Committed to it more than I've committed to anything in my life.
Why do you think that was?
I think I was in this beautiful place while I was reading this. And I think that we had gone through so much stress. It was just such a like emotional shift
Yeah.
And I
I
just
mean,
had my wedding. I had
just a
my,
reminder, I was still at the office dealing with all the stress and you were
yes,
in Thailand. I just wanted to put that
I
out
just,
there.
thank you. I know you've reminded me. You have reminded me of that. I understand and I apologize. So I was having this, like, I think when I go on vacation, I get like this, like, drive. And I'm sure other people feel this of like,
Mhm.
I'm going to make this huge shift in my life. And I was in this beautiful place. And so I read this book and I love waking up early. I have the most energy in the morning. So I read this book. You wake up at 5 a.m. I'm sure I've said this on the podcast before. You read for 20 minutes, you exercise for 20 minutes, and you journal for 20 minutes every single day. And you were doing it for like an amount of times until it becomes a habit. So I was committed to this. I did
Yeah.
this after a wedding. I did this,
Holy
like, I was
shit.
so committed. Right. And this is not my personality at all. And I started to get sick. Like, I started because I couldn't go to bed that early. That was
Yeah.
the problem, is that like I couldn't force myself to go to bed early. And so there was so much rigidity in it. And I couldn't get myself to go to bed. And I was getting sick from it. Like, my immune system was down because I wasn't getting enough sleep.
Mhm.
And I had to finally say, like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, why am I holding myself to this standard? Um, and it was the first time that my boundaries have really been that rigid and I hadn't listened to
Mm.
myself. And because of that, I was getting sick and I was like getting colds constantly. Also, it was like right when COVID was happening. So I'm
Yeah.
sure it was just like ripe. I was ripe for COVID.
You
Um,
brought COVID.
I brought COVID over. But bottom line is that you might be reading or listening to like wellness things that tell you this is the way that you should function and live your
Yeah.
life. And this is what's going to lead to happiness. But what that leaves out is the understanding of yourself as a unique individual that needs specific things.
Yeah.
And when you're reading something or you're listening to something, they have to make a general blanket statement about it. They just have to. That's how you talk about things. But you have to tailor everything you're listening to and reading, even this podcast. You have to tailor all of it to you and what works for you specifically. And part of that is knowing yourself and growing yourself. Quick plug. Okay, keep going.
Well, but I think that, we talk about it a ton in terms of diet culture, right?
Yeah.
Like, if you're exercising to lose weight, is a really high chance that that's going to become rigid and disordered. At least, even if the behaviors aren't, the thinking around it.
Yeah.
As opposed to, I move my body because it feels better.
Right.
Right. And so I think that's something to really think about, is why, I know we talk about this a lot, but why do we do the things that we do? If I'm setting a boundary with myself, whether it's wake up at 5 a.m., whether it's move my body, whether it's I'm not going to overcommit. This is right. We just finished out the holiday season. One of the things I said after like 2 weeks in December was like, I think I may have gone a little hard on the Christmas spirit. Was doing a ton of shit with my kid. We took her a million things. I understand it's magical, but I like it's like you get to like the week before Christmas, and I'm like, I don't give a shit. We already celebrated for the past 3 weeks. I'm done. And so to say to yourself, right, like, why am I doing the things that I'm doing, and what function are they providing in my life, and is it harmful in some
Yeah.
way?
Yeah. Let's see. Dealer's choice.
Why do I schedule stuff and then when time comes around, I dread having to go? Is that the one you're going to choose?
Yes, that's the
Yeah, you should
exact one
probably
I was
answer
gonna
this one. This is you
Um,
and me.
so reason being is that when you're scheduling it, you might have the energy for it. You might really want it. I do this so often to
Yeah.
myself where at the beginning of the week, I will schedule something for the weekend. And by the time I get to the weekend, I'm like, oh my God, I am so tired. Like, why did I do this? It's
Yeah.
because you make a plan when you're in a completely different headspace. And then once you get to that plan, you might be in a different headspace.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things we talked about earlier is that sometimes when you push yourself to do something that you thought you didn't want to do, it ends up being fun. You
Yeah.
end up being rejuvenated from it. This happens to me all the time where I will have this thinking about something gives me more exhaustion than actually doing it. the anticipation anxiety I get for these experiences is so much higher than what's necessary for the actual experience. So I would also ask you, that is the anxiety that you have or the dread that you have when it comes to doing that, is it actually connected to the experience you're about to have? Um, when you get into the situation, do you hate it as much as the dread is telling you you're going to hate it? If so, then maybe you need better boundaries with yourself to be able to say, I'm not going to make plans until the end of the week if I can, so that I know what kind of headspace that I'm in
Mm-hmm.
order to make commitments. If not, then I would just question the dread that comes up for you, question the anticipation anxiety that comes up for you, because your body might be telling you something that isn't actually coming to fruition when you're in the situation.
Mm. Okay. How do I respect them once you set them? So let's say I say to myself, right, like, um, I'm not gonna commit to stuff until Friday, or I'm not towards the end of the week, right? But then I get a text and this person's super hype about inviting me to this thing, and I don't listen. Right. So the question is, how do you slow it the fuck down?
So I was gonna
One
say.
of the things that I think you and I are very different with is like, so Jen and I share a calendar. We do most our entire lives together. And she'll do this thing. I do this thing that you probably fucking hate, which is I'll
I know.
call up and be like, have you seen next week? And you're like, no, I don't look at the week before. But the reason I do it is to say we can't. I already see A, B, and C ski, A, B, and C scheduled for next week. I can't put anything else on the calendar, especially like if my husband's traveling. I'm
Yeah.
like, I really can have like very minimal things on the calendar because I have anxiety
Yeah.
about my daughter picking up if she gets sick, any of those things. I don't have backup. Um, and so for me, that's one of the ways I actually set a boundary with myself is I only commit to a certain amount of things during the week. And I have to say no, but I have to do that by slowing it down and looking ahead.
You know what I just realized? I think that's your way of slowing down,
Yeah.
is to look at the week. See, like I make slow decisions about anything, no matter what. I don't have to
Yeah.
look at if someone asks me something, I'm like very quick to being like, I'll get back to you, or
But
like
for the
I'm
business, don't you feel like we get
questions
it
all the time.
in the season of the most recent season of our business?
Yeah.
The amount of meetings we've had that we don't really get to control.
Yeah. Well, yes, I think, yeah. I mean, the most recent season, it's been a wintry season. It's been, I don't know if we can take the most recent season and connect it to everything else, because there's been a lot of storms that we weathered. But I
Everything's
think
great, but we made some big changes to the business that just took a lot of
time.
logistical moves and time and stuff.
Yes. But that's what I would say. Okay, so here's what I was going to say, is that you have a specific way of slowing down and making
Mm-hmm.
choices. I have a specific way of slowing down and making choices. So that's what I would say to this person is like, what do you need in order to slow yourself down so that if someone's asking you something, as soon as they're asking, you're not saying, yeah, sure, absolutely, let's do that. Right? Is it that you're looking at your calendar and you're anticipating how you're going to feel at the end of the week,
Mm-hmm.
because you know that in the past, when you have been working a 9 to 5 and you've had a lot on your plate, that by the weekend you're exhausted? Like, use history as an indicator of, do I want to commit to this? Do I not want to commit to this? Or if you're someone who says yes immediately, if you can start to say, hey, I'll get back to you no matter what. Like, even if it's something you want to do, to just start to practice saying, let me look at the schedule, I will get back to you.
Mm-hmm.
It puts a pause in between your knee-jerk reaction to say yes, and because maybe you're a people pleaser, maybe you want to take care of them, maybe you do want to see them, but it gives you the time to be able to say, well, how does this actually feel for me? Is this something I actually want to commit to? Am I able to commit to this? And how will I feel once I get to this event? How will that feel for me?
Mm-hmm. All right, last question before we do Dear Em and Jen.
Okay.
I want to talk about this one because I think it's very important. Is can you talk about emotional boundaries with self when it comes to a knee-jerk reaction to manage other people's feelings?
Emotional boundaries with self.
So this, well, that's sort of, it goes into slowing down.
Yeah, it does.
So here's what I know. For me, usually whatever my instinct is, I shouldn't do that. When it comes to managing other people's feelings, because I have history of such codependent behavior. If it's trusting my instinct, then yes, I'm going to go with it immediately. But for me, my history of managing other people's behavior means I don't necessarily have the best immediate reactions.
And here's what I'm going to say about slowing it down. Here's how what I think is really important in being able to slow it down in those moments is I want you to ask yourself, in the face of other people's emotions, what's the emotion that's coming up for me? Because your reaction to try to take care of other people's feelings is coming from an emotion that's coming up for you. So someone else's emotion is triggering an emotion for you, and all you're seeing is the reaction to your own emotion that is causing you to want to take care of their. Is it discomfort? Is it anxiety? Is it what's the emotion that's coming up for you? When you can locate that, you can begin to slow yourself down to be able to say, well, what do I want to do with the emotion that comes up for me when that happens?
Yeah.
How do I want to take care of my own emotion as opposed to my reaction of wanting to take care of someone else's emotion?
Mm-hmm.
That is a reaction that you are having to your own emotion. The thing that we're missing, the thing that keeps us from slowing down, is the understanding of what that emotion is that we have. So get down to whatever that emotion is so that you can make a choice. You can decide what you want to do with it as opposed to, I'm going to react to this and take care of someone else's emotion.
Are you ready for Dear Em and Jen?
I'm so ready. You want to read
Dear,
it? You want me to?
Dear Em and Jen. Hi, ladies. I've been off work due to sickness for over a month. Returning has felt impossible for me, mainly due to my anxiety and feeling like I'm an imposter in my career. I guess it's fear of failure. I'm newly qualified in my profession. How would you advise I tackle this?
Can we normalize imposter syndrome? Like
Because
whether
clearly everyone's got it.
everyone's got it. Whether you are new in the field or whether you've been in the field for 50 years. I was just talking to my dad last night about imposter syndrome. He said he left a party with a bunch of lawyers. And he said something about like feeling like an imposter. I was like, oh, imposter syndrome. And he was like, what's that? And I had to explain it to him. But he has been a lawyer for years, 50, I don't know. I don't know how many years, but so long. I just want to normalize that that is just embedded into your experience.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're in a job, Emmalee and I have worked through this a lot too, that as business owners, we're always doing something new. And when you're doing the same thing over and over again, I think it's easy at some point to start to overcome some of that imposter syndrome because you start to build on that. But when you're doing a bunch of different things in your career, which most careers entail, even if they're like small, nuanced things, it's easy for that imposter syndrome to creep back up. What I would say to that is just because you're feeling like an imposter doesn't mean you are one. And it doesn't mean that you can't do your job really well.
You know, for me, it goes back to something we were talking about before, which is self-compassion.
Yeah.
If I took a month off of everything, it would take me time to recuperate, right, of anything that I did. And so, one, we have a great episode with Dr. Kristen Neff on self-compassion, and she has an amazing book, Fear Self-Compassion, I highly recommend. And that's what we're talking about here in a big way, right? Which is how do I have compassion for myself as I enter into something hard?
Yeah.
And compassion would mean slowing things down, giving yourself grace, not beating yourself up. If you struggle to even remember how to log back into your computer, right? Like whatever way that looks like, this is the time for self-compassion. And maybe you have to write it on a sticky note and put it on your desktop monitor at work. But one of the things to say to yourself is that like this is also goes back to that helpfulness of the internal monologue and dialogue that you have with yourself of I'm going to be okay. This has been a very hard transition and reintegration back into work, and I'm going to figure it out.
Also, you've been sick for over a month.
Horrible.
And you know, when you get over a fever and you feel like a newborn baby for some reason, like your legs don't work the same and like your arms don't work the same. You know what I mean? You just feel like completely depleted of your humanness for some reason. And you're just like, it feels like you're seeing the world again for the first time. So I would also say, like, physically, I assume that being sick for over a month takes a huge physical toll on you. And that also affects your mental health. So, like, there's such a mind body connection there, too. And so, along with the discussion around self compassion, understand that you have been sick for over a month. And so, give yourself time, give your body time to recuperate, give your mind time to recuperate. Just because you're back at work doesn't mean that you are fully healed from that. So, give yourself time to work through that. It will take time to feel fully whole again and back in the swing of things.
And that's it for today's episode. We always ask you to rate, review, subscribe, follow an Apple Podcast. You can check us out on YouTube, follow us on Instagram, ShrinkChicks at the Therapy or at the Therapy Group. We have merch at shrinkchicks.com/merch. We have journals on Amazon. You can write in ShrinkChicks journals. But really what we're passionate about is matching you with a wonderful, wonderful clinician. And so if you are interested in restarting, starting, switching up your therapeutic journey, we would love to help you connect with a therapist to do that. You can check us out, thetherapygroup.com. Jen and I do all the matching ourselves. We are so excited to be doing this all with you. Thank you for joining us this week. And don't forget that to grow yourself, you got to know yourself.